You're listening to The Weather Junkies.
Oh boy. Large wedge tornado coming up into Tuscaloosa.
A winter storm warning is in effect for our area.
We can expect at least another 2 to 4 inches overnight. Then that snow is
The National Weather Service in Huntsville has issued a tornado warning for northwestern Massachusetts.
14 to 22 inches of snow!
Good Thursday evening. Thank you for joining the Weather Junkies podcast. I'm Tyler Jankowski, joining the show from the Champlain Valley, alongside Dakota Smith, who is joining us tonight from Colorado. Dakota?
Hey, Tyler. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. It's another semi-stormy day in Colorado. It's been kind of afternoon storms and showers every day recently, but not so much today. The plains have a few showers, but mostly dry here. We had a bad thunderstorm last night roll through here. Lots of evening lightning, which I love looking at night. When the storms end up on the plains, you can still see them from the Front Range, and it's really, really awesome. So yeah, kind of a normal pattern here right now, honestly. And then we're looking at some heat, as a lot of the country is looking at this weekend. Not looking forward to that because I do not have air conditioning. As quite a few places in Colorado don't have air conditioning, so not looking forward to that. Tyler, how's the weather in the Champlain Valley?
It's finally turned around, and I'm still recovering, but Tuesday was the last day of the showers and the cold. And actually, if you still look at a weather map, there's still an upper level low over the good old Commonwealth of Penna. And it's somewhat impacting us as we go into tomorrow, but it's warmed up, definitely. We were in the lower 80s today, and we're going to come very close to 90 by Sunday with some humidity, probably the first humidity of the season. I also don't have air conditioning, so I'm not looking forward to the humidity, but it was such a terrible start to the month. I don't think I'm going to mind the heat. It looks like for the foreseeable future, we're in the 70s, 80s, or maybe even 90s sprinkled in. But I did some stats to see how cold the start of the month was. There's a really nice website called Climate Perspectives. Some people that design it, I think, call it Klimper or Climate or whatever. But if you Google your regional climate center here in the Northeast, it's the Northeast Regional Climate Center, you can access this website. And basically, I calculated for the first 6 days of June, the average temperature, and compared that average to all of the other averages for every year of recorded history. So basically take June 1 through 6, get an average for each year and rank them. For 3 climate sites in our area, it was the 4th coldest start to June, 5th coldest at another, and at the longest standing site, it was the 23rd coldest. So it was apparent that with the longer period of record, it was tougher to set an eye-catching number. But with the sites that had 68, 57, 73 years of data, it was one of the coldest starts to the month.
Wow. Yeah, so you're ready for summer.
I'm ready for summer, but you know what? It is June 8th. June 8th? Can you believe it? June is a summer month, and I was thinking about this. And the reason I'm thinking about it is because I'm so far north.
Yeah.
It's a hard shutoff at some point in September or October. So we're really we're chopping off summer as we go. It's June after all. So with each passing day, we're getting closer to winter. That's what happens when you go up in latitude. You just have a shorter summer.
Yeah, no, I can relate. Yeah, whenever I know at the beginning of the winter, like November, October, people get all excited for the first snowfall of the year.
Well, I'm not quite at that feeling yet, but I do think about how that feeling somehow comes about.
Yeah, well, I'm not there yet either, but I'm always telling people, hey, you have like 5 more months of this, 6, maybe and more than that. you have 7 more months of this or something. So I'm always like, I always want the warmth to last forever in right before winter, so that because I know January, February, March comes along, it's going to be brutal.
I always say it. As much as I don't want to wish summer away, my favorite time of the year is what?
Football season.
Well, it begins with Little League, and then it
Little league, then football.
Yeah, you can't forget.
Yeah, you're right. I can't forget. That starts in August or
Yeah,
July.
and I guess I should clarify. By that I mean like the Little League international tournament, so the World Series, the regional, the World Series, certainly that, and a lot of PA work for me. So I'm giving you my notice now. I probably won't be on the show that week.
Well, yeah, we got to figure out. We have to pre-record some episodes, I think, for that.
Yeah, and speaking of pre-recorded episodes, we'll get to it soon, but we do have one tonight.
Yeah, Greta Shum from Shum Show and from Climate Central. I recorded that, I think, 3 weeks ago, and we had a few tech difficulties, so we couldn't do it live.
And I slept through that one.
Yeah. That was a funny experience. Tyler, you ready? No response.
Well, we do have some tweets here that we're going to go through before we get to that. The first one you can start off with. It's from Greg Postel.
Yeah, so Greg Postel, you can follow him on Twitter. Greg Postel, he's a hurricane and storm specialist and co-host of AMHQ on the Weather Channel. And his tweet says, "I spy valley fog evaporating in the morning sun," and he attached a visible satellite image of low-level clouds in river valleys and normal valleys, and how they evaporate when the sun comes up. And to me, this is just a classic thing that happens in the Northeast pretty commonly throughout the year. And I don't know. It brings back a nostalgia from living in that area, looking at the visible satellite imagery and looking at some of those low-level clouds starting to get eaten away by warmth and drier air as the sun comes up. So awesome image. And
I believe
I just wanted to share that.
The Weather Channel has exclusive access, or they're one of a few groups that have access to Go 16 on the weather graphic system that almost everyone uses, because we don't have access to that right now, but I can't wait until we do. It's amazing.
So they actually have it in their system? I figured he just pulled the data from somewhere else and slapped a...
Well, it's clearly, to me, it's a low quality GIF, but based on the labels and the banner, I think it's from Max, from their graphic system. Hard to tell, but it's not very high quality.
Yeah, interesting. We'll move on here to our next tweet from Kevin Duggan. You can follow him at Coloradoan _ Doug. He's a reporter for the Coloradoan, which is a local, for me, it's a local newspaper and website that does news in northern Colorado. His tweet says, "After affirming its climate goals are in line with the Paris Agreement, Fort Collins Council wraps it up for the night." So Fort Collins had set these goals a while back to become carbon neutral in 2050. And that's actually what the Paris Agreement. So they just are basically saying, yeah, we're sticking to our plan, even though the United States is coming out of the Paris Agreement, which a lot of places have done in the past, 2 weeks since that happened. Big cities, New York City, Denver, Atlanta, and even whole states have started to do this. I think California, Oregon, Hawaii have all, the entire state has said they're going to follow the Paris Agreement. And recently Hawaii actually enacted a law that said they were going to not just something that, they're saying that they're going to abide by the Paris Agreement, but a law that actually says they have to. So just kind of an interesting thing that happened after we pulled out of the Paris Agreement.
I saw a tweet come across today that said European Union to work with individual states on climate going forward. So that's someone else outside of the country just working with the individual states. I can't think of another time we've seen that, but to me, that shows how strong we are as a country. I mean, you can do that.
Yeah, no, I think it goes to show, there's kind of a checks and balances of our government, not just executive, judicial, and legislative, but local, national, and state level. So yeah, even though the national level things don't happen, state and local level things can happen, and that's what we're seeing here. So it'll be interesting to follow.
Our third and final tweet is also one that Dakota selected. It's from David Williams. He's on Twitter at David Duncan W. The bio says tornado chaser, literary adventurer, snowboarder, CrossFitter, pilot. And his tweet is a tweet to Reed Timmer. It says, drove up Mount Evans in Colorado today. A storm rolled in at 11,000 feet. Wait, is this what I think it is?
Can you believe that?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a land spout tornado at 11,000 feet.
I'm sure that wasn't on radar.
I don't think it was warned at all. I honestly think these happen more than are reported, because it just seems that during these days where we have some convection up there, I see these photos every now and then, but not many people are up there. So if I'm seeing them, when just a few people are up at those elevations observing storms, which is tough because only there aren't that many roads that go that high. I just feel like it has to happen a lot more, and they would be worthy of a storm prediction center tornado report.
Now, when you say land spout tornado, do you mean it didn't come out of a mesocyclone?
Yeah, it wasn't like a supercellular tornado.
So did it form from the ground up?
I'm not actually sure. I don't think that's what that means. I think it's more just of the it wasn't a product of mesoscale.
Yeah, I'm wondering. So
Rotation.
if it wasn't a mesocyclone tornado, the mountains cause a huge challenge aside from anything we say here. But if there was no mesocyclone, no rotation halfway up the clouds or in the clouds, you really wouldn't see it on radar unless it was close enough for the radar to actually sample the tornado.
Yeah, it'd be tough. I have seen land spout tornadoes on radar before, but not in the mountains. The mountains make it tough.
The ones you've seen on radar, were they close to the radar site?
Well, just actually the other day in North Dakota, there were a bunch of them. But those were actually associated with mesoscale.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they were real tornadoes, not this fake one.
Well, and this is this is just.
No, I know. I'm just kidding.
All right. Well,
I was trying to get you riled up.
I will get riled up. You were successful because it doesn't really matter. It's just a classification: land spout tornado versus supercellular tornado.
Yeah,
weird. Yeah. I don't know. That could be a whole topic.
The SPC actually has some great videos they just put out in February where they explain the difference, and they do a really nice job explaining how tornadoes form, or at least how we think they form. And it was really nice and simple and easy to understand.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that actually. Yeah, still a lot we don't know, honestly, but especially about tornado genesis. That's why we have all these field campaigns right now, going out there trying to get high def Doppler radar and even some in situ measurements from pods. So
who's our guest tonight?
So yeah, our guest tonight is Greta Shum of Climate Central. She hosts the Shum Show, which is a show that talks about climate news. And she has a fellowship right now, or she had a fellowship in climate communication. And so the Shum Show is actually a product of that, but now it has continued on. And she does a lot of awesome stuff with the Shum Show. You can find those on Twitter or at climatecentral.org. She also does some work with Weather Shift, which is a relatively new website from Climate Central. I guess it's been maybe almost 2 years now that Weather Shift has been up. You can find that at weathershift.com. And they do a lot of cool stuff with weather and how climate change is going to impact your local weather. It's a fun site. You can also just get your everyday weather there, even if you don't care about the climate aspect of it.
All right, so we'll dive into the interview with Greta Shum right now. And as soon as we're done with that, we'll come back and wrap up this week's podcast.
And that's chatting with Greta about her show and what she does at Climate Central. So Greta, what's your background and how did you get into climate and communicating climate?
Oh, thanks, Dakota. I went to school and I graduated with a degree in comparative literature. So I was not really, into like the science of weather and climate until I started working at Climate Central, which I joined right after college. And my role at Climate Central was kind of like a multimedia journalist. So I began making videos right off the bat. And, I've only been working there for 3 years, and my kind of aspiration as a young person interested in like climate and journalism is to be an effective communicator of like the facts and impacts of climate change. So that's kind of like the aim of the organization as a whole, of Climate Central. And what we do is like produce a lot of products that give people tools or explanations for understanding how climate change actually affects our weather. And the Shum Show is kind of a result of that.
I'll talk about the Shum Show, but first, I was reading your bio, and it said you were a multimedia journalism High Meadows fellow. What was that all about? What did you get to do with that fellowship?
Yeah, it was a great fellowship. So it's a 2-year fellowship where the High Meadows Foundation pays for recent graduates to go around and work at places like EDF and Climate Central, and let's see, what are the other ones? Real Food Generation and Wilderness Society, and basically get involved in environmental issues on the ground right after graduating. So in that position at Climate Central, I was making videos, little explainer videos about climate change, about like it's sort of impacts of climate change. So how are hurricanes affected by climate change? How are heat waves affected by climate change or made more common or more severe? I also was working on a project that's putting out robotic floats into the Southern Ocean that go and measure sort of changes in pH and oxygen content, things like that, which are very much affected by climate change in the Southern Ocean, which is an ocean that I had actually never heard of. It's just the ocean surrounding Antarctica. And as part of that, I got to go to the Southern Ocean on a research boat and be there while the scientists were putting out these floats into the ocean. So it was pretty sweet.
I saw those episodes. I thought those were awesome when you were out there. Yeah, that was really cool.
They were really fun.
Yeah. And so on the Shum Show, what for someone who's never seen it, what is kind of a typical episode and why should they come around and watch it?
Yeah, so typical episode comes out on Friday, and the idea is to give a recap of like news in the weather and climate world. So I usually kind of give a little summary of like what's going on, kind of like you guys do in the U.S. What are like the major like weather systems that have come around, and what are like some of the like more high-level international weather events that have happened. And I kind of go through those, and I also have like sort of a recap of any climate news that has happened. So like when COP21 was going on, that was like an issue, but also like if there are any like ties to the actual weather, I'll like put that together. Like nice. For example, when the start of hurricane season, I'll kind of talk about like what's going on with hurricanes? Like, how are they going to be affected by climate change again? So, and then the sort of overall aim of the Shum Show is to be positive and light and happy. So it's me at my desk, just kind of like rattling off the things that I think are interesting over the course of the week. And I think like one of the hard things about climate change and being a sort of journalist in climate change is that it's sort of abstract and it's complicated and it's depressing.
Yeah.
So the Shum Show is kind of an attempt to make it less depressing and make it happy. I think people usually don't remember, this is I think a Maya Angelou quote. She says, like, people don't remember what you say and people don't remember what you do, but they remember how you make them feel.
Mhm.
And so I think making something that's like memorable and that people can take with them and then bring with them to their own regular conversations with whoever in their family is interested in climate change, just like giving them the tools to talk about it. So,
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. I think the way the field of meteorology is going, not just climate, but meteorology is going, people react to that kind of information if I don't know if it's kind of told in a story in a sense. I know it's tough to do that for like tornado warnings and stuff, but if people can relate to what you're saying, then it definitely gets the point across. And
absolutely, yeah. And I know so many people who are interested in what's going on. Obviously, the weather affects everyone, but they don't necessarily, understand like why like something is happening in one area and not in another. Like something like lake effect snow, I didn't really understand until I started working at Climate Central because you have no real like need to. So
Right.
it's kind of just like an entry point to understanding these like larger weather patterns, but then also bringing it back to climate change.
so where can people find the Shum Show? I'm assuming at climatecentral.org, but is that?
Yeah, you can go to climatecentral.org or you can go to weathershift.com. So that's it's SHIFT. And that's our weather site that's sort of produced by Climate Central. You can go there to get your local weather too if you want, but it also gives you your long-term weather trends, which is pretty cool. And you can watch the Shum Show, which is awesome.
Yeah, we've talked about Weather Shift before and how kind of revolutionary it is and different from anything else that's out there. Yeah, we've had, I guess, actually, give us a quick recap of Weather Shift and maybe some of the things that you do for that site.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a super cool site. Like I said, it will give you your weather. So if you wake up in the morning and you want to like check the weather, you can go to that site. But you can also see how your weather has been changing locally. So I'm originally from Kansas City, and I can go type in my location, or even it'll just like read my location in Princeton, and it'll show me like if it's raining, like it has been this week. It'll show me how like heavy downpours have been increasing over the past few decades just in my local area, which is super cool. I just don't know like how like even seeing trends yourself is like incredible right now. Like you can like see, oh, this is like never used to have this cold so far into like May, but going online and seeing it in a graph and seeing it very dynamically is pretty cool. So we also have like meteorologists who we work with at Climate Central writing articles for Weather Shift, and so my first sort of job was to make the little videos that go along with all the different topics that we have on Weather Shift, which are like drought and heat impacts and tornadoes, like how are tornadoes affected by climate change, if at all, that kind of thing. So you can learn about that online.
Yeah, that's great. So that's wxshift.com. You can find that there. So we've had a few of the Climate Central folks on our show. It's probably more Climate Central people on than any other like one organization. We had Brian Kahn, and then we had Andrea on, and we also had Bernadette on.
Awesome.
And I feel like I've kind of got to know some of the people over there and kind of a little taste of the atmosphere. And I'm curious, it seems like an awesome place to work. What's it like to work there, and what's that atmosphere like?
Yeah, it's actually really, really fun. I mean, first of all, the cool thing about Climate Central is that the whole motive is to communicate climate change, which involves so many different things. Communication, first of all. So we have like awesome journalists like Andrea and Brian, and we also have like meteorologists on the science side like Bernadette. We also have data analysts who use data from NOAA, NASA, EPA to create graphics. And then we have designers like artists who will take just like a chart, like a line graph or a bar graph of like temperatures and make it into something really engaging and beautiful. But then we also not only do we have like all these people with different talents, who are collaborating to make something great, but we also have a whole bunch of different programs. So you think like, okay, communicating the science of climate change, what does that look like? It's more a bunch of hybrid programs, more than it is like data analysts on one side of the door and journalists on the other side. So you have like this sea level rise program, which you can look up. It's called Surging Seas. If you go to climatecentral.org and look up Surging Seas, it's like this map that like shows the coast of the US, and you can take your like toggle and increase the number of feet of sea level rise and show where the coastline will go. So like Florida, like disappears like halfway when you raise the sea level or increase temperature, and it's kind of overwhelming. And then we also have like an attribution team that does analysis of extreme weather events and calculates the percent basically calculates like how much of an impact climate change had on that event. So it's pretty cool. And then we have like weather shift team, which involves Brian, so it's a cool group of folks.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. You guys do a lot. Do you know like a rough estimate of how many people are working over there? Because it seems like it's a big cohort.
It's about 40 or 50, I think so. 45. Yeah.
Nice. And you guys are in Princeton?
That's right. Mm-hmm. All of our journalists are remote because they're, interviewing.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Awesome. So talking a little bit more about, that's kind of it seems like it's a topic of the episode is communicating climate science.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you see scientists and educators and communicators doing in the future to better communicate and articulate climate science?
That's an awesome question. I think one thing that I would like to see is harnessing the tools of the general public to come together and build their own ideas into something great. So like a lot of the most exciting things that we see at Climate Central happen really, really locally and really, really like person based. For example, like we did basically one of our biggest programs at Climate Central is this program that provides graphics to local meteorologists throughout the country who have a really strong connection to the communities that they're communicating with, right? And they're also trained messengers. They're really like engaging people. And what they'll do is like take our graphics and make them into their own. So they'll like even just like straight up change them into something that's really engaging for their audience. And I think that's the main thing that communication is meant to do in the future. So I think like with videos and with like more interactive social media, what we see is that communication is becoming more of a tool for the user or like the audience than it is for the people who are putting it out there. So like you'll take something and then make it into something even, it's almost like grassroots communication, and like giving someone the tool. Yeah. So like the biggest challenge that I see for climate is that like when we try to communicate facts about climate change, only people who really understand that already are going to be there to digest it and then take it and run with it. But at that point, the thing that they can do is talk to their community, people who aren't necessarily going and searching for that information, and they can be the communicators themselves. So I guess it's more just like giving the right tools to their audience.
Gotcha. You mentioned like new technologies and using like new social media One thing that pops to my mind is virtual reality. I think
Totally.
I think it's kind of far off far off. I don't know, maybe 10 years plus for science to become more used in virtual reality. I know right now it's being used for gaming and for it's used in like different like workforces to. I know Lockheed Martin has used the virtual reality setup for I don't know a couple dozen years now, and they use it to like practice working on spacecrafts and stuff like that. So I think they're we have to get to the point where it's not crazy expensive. But
yeah, exactly.
Could you see like I don't know virtual reality being used as an education tool?
Absolutely. Like I mean, first like before even virtual reality, like 360 videos are becoming so incredibly like
that's a good point. Yeah,
common now. Like even when we took our trip to the Antarctic, we took along some 360 cameras with us. So you like hook it up to like the bow of the ship as it's like kind of bobbing through waves and going, like even just like 12 knots. Once you look at that through like the like headset, that even just like a cardboard headset, it becomes so real and almost
that's
like
awesome.
jarring. So bringing like different parts of the world together in such a real way is totally, I think, can be really powerful too. And also like the cool thing about like interactive games, or like say like video games that use virtual reality is that like stories become so real. I mean, like
Yeah.
I have a friend who says that like he had never cried in a movie, but he actually cried in a video game.
Oh my
When he
gosh.
first won. So like really when you are the driver of the story yourself, it really makes you understand and become passionate a lot more effectively. So I really hope to see VR becoming a useful tool for science communication.
Yeah, I hope so. I can relate to your friend because I went to Lockheed Martin. They have a big office in the south of Denver, and they have a virtual reality set, and they have like a demo to use, and it's actually a video game made by shoot, I can't remember the company, but they made Portal, the game Portal.
Oh yeah.
They make a whole bunch of games, and I played for like 5 minutes. And I was like addicted. I was like, I do not want to leave. It was amazing. It blew my mind.
Absolutely.
I
Even
don't know.
like Oculus, I can totally see when people are just have this technology in their hands. Like you'll just have like a teaser. I got to put on like the headset for Oculus, and even just the teaser, they had like a dinosaur in front of you, and you're actually terrified. It brings like your real emotions to the fore when it's in front of you. Yeah.
It's amazing technology. I just hope it gets cheaper because
I
can't
exactly.
afford. Yeah. Anyways, so what are some of the things that you are going to be working on in the future? Do you have anything new planned at Climate Central, and maybe some of the things that Climate Central might be doing in the future?
Yeah. Well, so I'll start with one thing that just came out yesterday. Climate Central made this. Actually, so in the past, Climate Central has put together a couple of reports about electric cars, and something that like people may already know is that electric cars are becoming much more common. But what you might not know is that electric cars are not necessarily as climate friendly as they seem. You kind of think like, oh, one way to like reduce my carbon footprint is to get an electric car. But in states that like rely pretty heavily on coal for electricity, when you charge your electric car, you don't necessarily get like solar energy. You get like energy that's been created from coal burning, and so when you drive on the road, you're actually emitting more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere than if you had been driving a gas-powered vehicle. So what we just put out yesterday was this like website where you can select your state, and it will tell you the best vehicles to drive in that state. So it only looks at 2017 vehicles, a selection of traditional gas-powered vehicles, but most plug-in hybrids and electric cars and regular conventional hybrids. But that's pretty cool because I kind of don't even know where most states get their electricity, and I don't really know even where. I didn't know where New Jersey got most of its electricity. Turns out it's like very little coal and mostly natural gas and nuclear, which makes it really good for electrics. Not so much for Colorado, unfortunately. But,
Yeah.
But something that's coming out down the road is actually a change to the Shum Show. In the future, we're starting, actually in a couple weeks, we're going to make this Shum Show a little bit less about news and more about sort of concepts. So it's going to be seasons of the Shum Show, or call them like actual episodes. And it'll be about 12 episodes per season. So, and it'll have themes. So the next theme is going to be, heat, and how do we see heat affecting the weather as climate change continues to increase temperatures. And there'll be a season about like solutions to climate change and things like that. It'll stay fun though. Still have like bangs and everything.
That's the best. Yeah. Well, I'm excited. Looking forward to it. I actually just went to that site, climatefriendlycars.climatecentral.org. And I apologize. I meant to look at this. I saw you tweet it the other day, or maybe it was just yesterday. And I meant to go to it before, but I'm looking at Colorado. Colorado is one of the worst places to charge an electric vehicle. And then it talks about how much coal makes up, and then the other part is natural gas. I know for a fact that where I live, it's coal, because we actually, Loveland, Fort Collins, and Estes Park own their own energy. They own a coal plant in Wyoming, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so that's how they get all their, pretty much most of their energy. There are people putting solar on the grid, but it's not nearly as much. They do have goals though now to reduce how much coal they're using, but it's going to be tricky because they own a super profitable coal plant. They've invested so much, and it's like a very, as far as coal plants go, it's very efficient. I think it's like in the top like 1% of efficiency for coal plants in the U.S. So it's like, it's kind of like a weird thing. Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing though, because it's like they own this really awesome plant, but now they have to figure out what they're going to do, because it's like, do they really want to waste the money that they spent to build this up and own it, compared to reducing and meeting their goals? Sorry, I went on a tangent. It's a very interesting kind of complex issue that they're going to have to deal with in the future. That's just northern Colorado. I don't know how many places own their own like power plant or coal plant. Probably not very many. I mean, I have actually no idea, but yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, that's super interesting, because I mean, I think one of the biggest problems is that like people, it is going to be an extreme like change, shift as we bring more renewables onto the grid. But if you look at like the shift that's been happening already, the U.S. has been depending upon coal for its electricity less and less as a whole, and that goes for like almost every state, which is pretty cool. And it's like you say, like technology is going to change everything, especially our energy and our electricity. But yeah, it's interesting because like every state has its own story too. Like Tennessee has its own story, and everyone's going to do it differently. So probably a lot of people are going to do it really well. Like California is going to make the switch really easily, but everyone's going to do it their own way.
And soon enough, coal will be more expensive. Even I mean, I know now it's more expensive to start a coal plant than to start a solar plant, but it's still cheaper to operate a coal plant than to start a solar plant. But I think eventually it's going to be cheaper to even just create a whole new solar field and solar plant from scratch than to own and operate a coal plant. So that'll be when it like, everything really just is going to, I feel like there's going to be a point where it's all just going to shift really quickly. And I think we're getting close to that, honestly. And it's awesome.
Yeah. I think it's going to be really cool to see that shift. It's going to be very interesting.
I'm probably going to say finally or something like that, because it seems like it should have happened, but it takes time. So we ask everyone on the show the same question at the end of the show, and that is, what advice would you give to someone up and coming in your field in climate and communication? What kind of advice would you give them to make their way in the field and find a job, or make their way through school and eventually find a job?
Yeah, this is a terrific question that you guys always ask. I think for me, I think there are sort of two different people in the world. One kind of person who really seeks out advice and has a really good, sense of being able to like distill really good advice into their own like mind, and does it. And who just like doesn't necessarily seek out advice and does it their own way. And I really encourage people to be like sort of a hybrid of the two, to like be able to advice when possible, but then be able to take it in stride when you when someone tells you don't do that, and you are able to like continue to go forward. I think I've been in both situations where I like strictly followed someone's advice and was really happy about it, but also like went completely against the advice and was really happy about it. And then the complete reverse, where I ignored someone's advice and totally regretted it, and vice versa. So it's I think being able to just like keep walking forward and like keep your shoulders, head on your shoulders as you go forward.
Yeah.
And maintain confidence. Someone said recently, I was like at a graduation, no one like out of all the people who have lived in the world has ever lived your life. So you're the only person who actually like knows what's best for you. No one else is going to, but everyone else has lived their own life. And so they have a lot of good, knowledge. So I don't know if that's helpful to anyone.
Wait, so should people take this advice or not?
It's up to you.
I honestly, I really like that. It's like when you can make your own advice and think about your situation and say like I don't know, it's kind of weird because you seek people to find advice, but like you said, you're the only person that's lived your life. So like, what kind of advice would you give to someone in your situation? AKA, what advice would you give yourself right now?
Would I give myself right now?
Yeah.
Gosh, I would probably
not.
What do you mean?
You don't have to answer that if you don't want to. It's kind of rhetorical. No, it's okay. It was rhetorical essentially.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for talking with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And thanks for coming on. And yeah, best of luck with everything at Climate Central. Looking forward to 6 seasons in a movie. I don't know if you get that reference, but it's a community.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And that was Greta Shum of Climate Central. Thanks to Greta for coming on the podcast, and for Dakota for pre-recording that. Dakota, any parting thoughts?
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes.
Not really. No. It was a great chat, fun chat. And glad she could join us. And I honestly really liked her advice because it was just very, very different. And it sounded like she had listened to a few episodes just to kind of see what people say. Because hers was very different than anything we ever had. And that was like, don't listen to all advice, which was kind of ironic.
Established podcast.
So
yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. We gotta look at those numbers.
Yeah. Speaking of the podcast and going forward, we have an episode next week, and then we've rescheduled Garrett for 2 weeks from now. So that would be June 22nd.
And in July, we actually scheduled a National Weather Service employee forecaster.
Ooh.
In, I believe, Minnesota, but I'm not exactly sure which office. So it's been a while since we've had someone from National Weather Service on.
Yeah, and I've actually been to the Weather Service here a couple times now, so maybe we'll have someone from the local office on from Burlington in the future.
We should have someone on to talk about mesoscale dynamics, because we got into that discussion about land spout, and that's not really my
Well, I'm sure there's a
specialty.
great candidate at Penn State.
Cumgen?
Possibly.
Markowski?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we
Think
should
about
make
this
that happen.
Post show.
What's that?
I said we could think about this post show.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Anyways, thanks everyone for listening. Really appreciate it. You can follow us on Twitter at the WX Junkies. If you already don't, we're on Facebook. You can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and pretty much any podcast platform. And if you're listening right now on a podcast platform like iTunes, give us a rating or review. We really appreciate that. We'll give you a shout out if you review the show. I think we're up to 11 ratings and a few reviews. So please go ahead and do that. We'd really like to hear from you. So we already teased the next show. Tyler, you want to send us out?
Yeah, on behalf of Greta, Dakota, and myself, thank you so much for listening to this week's edition of the Weather Junkies podcast. And we certainly hope that you'll join us right back here 1 week from now.